Alright guys, so I did another search on Amazon and I was able to find it in this black, size 11, which is a half size bigger than I usually do, for $140, and there's only one left in stock. What do you guys think? I'm like the shoe game Liam Neeson. I will find you. Alright guys, let's open this bad boy up. Endorphin Speed 2, the greatest running shoe of all time. I am so curious to see how these things run, because based on everything you guys have told me, this thing is gonna change my life. Alright guys, so here's the deal. You told me that the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2 was the greatest running shoe of all time. Now, this didn't come from one person or two people or three people or four people or five people or even 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people. This came from dozens of you on my Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 first run review, in the long run video, in every single video I've posted about the Speed 4. Somebody is out there saying that the Speed 2 is the greatest running shoe of all time. So because of that, I got on my best Liam Neeson and was able to track down one of the last remaining pairs of these things in my size. So today we're going to do a hands-on comparison of the Speed 2 and the Speed 4, and I'm gonna let you know whether or not the Speed 4 can bring back some of the glory that was in the Speed 2, because this is going to be my first time running in the Speed 2. So is the hype real? I don't know, let's find out. So over the past week, I've been putting a ton of miles on the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 right here. And tomorrow I'm actually gonna be posting my 100-mile review with the shoe, so I know it very intimately. I'm just waiting to do one more speed workout to knock out those last 10 miles with this shoe. Now, as I got flooded with requests to compare this guy here to the Speed 2, it is now in the office. I tracked down, I believe, the last remaining pair on the interwebs of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. Now these are actually in a size 11. I have the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 here, as well as my last Speed 3 in a size 10.5, but sometimes I go between sizes. For example, New Balance, I'll do 10.5 or 11, and some other shoes I'll go up to 11 as well. So shouldn't be any issues with the fit or the feel out there on the run. We'll do a little bit of a fit test before we get into this run, but I did want to note that just because the specs might be a little bit different, especially the weight. But we did do another live weigh-in, so let's take a look right here. Alright guys, time for the live weigh-in. First up in the weight comparison, we are going to do the Speed 4 left shoe. So this comes in at 253 grams. Right shoe comes in at 257. Okay, so that's an average of 255. Now Speed 2 comes in at 242, and this is a half size bigger, guys. This one is a half size bigger, so if they were comparable sizes, this might be 240, 239. So 242 for the right shoe. Let's get the left shoe. Left shoe is 244, so it's 240. Let's call this 240 for the black Speed 2, just because the size is different. So the Speed 2 is 8.4 grams roughly in the size 10.5, size 11, and the Speed is 8.9 grams. So even despite the half size bigger that we're seeing in the Speed 2, the Speed 4 has significantly gained weight over both the Speed 3 and the Speed 2, the Speed 2 coming in as the lightest of that group. Now with the Endorphin Speed line being positioned as Saucony's workout category of shoes, one of the reasons runners love the Speed 2 is because it had a fast ride that was forgiving for everyday rides, still had that power run PB in here, but it just felt snappier. That's the word that keeps coming up when runners describe the Speed 2 to me. They say it feels snappier, whereas the Speed 3 and the Speed 4, as I've gotten some miles in it, don't have that same pizzazz when trying to pick up the pace. So that's one of the things I'm gonna be looking for as we get out there on the ride. How much snap does the Speed 2 have versus the Speed 4? And we can see where that snap is coming from because I also did a flexibility test, and you can see there is a huge difference between the rigidity of the nylon plates in the Speed 4 versus the Speed 2.
Definitely more flexible. Speed 4 is a lot more flexible. That is crazy. Yeah, Speed 2, I can only bend it to this point with the same amount of force. Speed 4, that plate just completely bends in half. Wild. Let's get the Speed 3 real quick. Also very flexible. Just as flexible as the Speed 4.
So both these use Saucony's Power Run PB foam, and I've found in the version 4 here, it performs nearly identically to the Speed 3, at least with the foam, and it doesn't seem like they've made too many changes in the Speed 2, Speed 3, and Speed 4 in the compound of Power Run PB itself. It is possible they kept the formula exactly the same across the 3 generations of shoes. I think that's likely the case, and the difference in ride is coming from the way that the rocker is shaped, 1, the rigidity of the plate, 2, and also the wideness of the foam and how heavy the shoe weighs as the third key thing influencing the ride. So Speed 2 here is a lot narrower. We can do a little comparison here. You'll see just from the base out in the back, and again, this is even 1/2 size bigger than the Speed 4, but you can see in the base out here in the back, we have substantially more width out here on the Speed 4. Again, same thing in the midfoot. The Speed 2 is looking a little bit skinnier, and then up in the forefoot, it's a little bit skinnier as well. And one thing that's interesting to note is that the Power Run PB in the Speed 2, at least to the push test, feels a lot softer than the Speed 4, which is interesting because I've been told to expect the Speed 2 to be a firmer, snappier shoe. So if you look at this, I can get my finger really deep into the Speed 2. And then with the Speed 4 here, not so much. We're getting a little bit more resistance with the Speed 4. So one of the key elements that they've introduced into the Speed 3 and 4 that the 2 doesn't have is a little bit more of that stability. So it is possible that maybe they stiffened up the foam just a little bit to add that stability to the 3 and 4. I do have to note the Speed 4 is an extremely stable shoe, and that's one of the things I'll be looking out for when I take out the Speed 2 for a first ride in a few minutes. How does this do in terms of the stability? Because with that narrower platform, with that narrower heel, and maybe a little bit of a squishier foam, we might not be getting as much support for stable landings. Now, in terms of the upper, both of these have decently padded uppers, but the big difference we're going to see is in the materials. The Speed 4 is a major improvement over the Speed 2, especially in the looks. If you just look at the general vibe of these guys, Speed 4 looks much sharper, much more modern. Of course, it has been a few years since the Speed 2 came out, but overall, Saucony did a really nice job with the design update on the shoe. Versus Speed 2, it looks like a runner's runnery running shoe, which is not my favorite look out there. I do not love the style that we get here on the Speed 4. Alright guys, now in terms of the outsole coverage on these, they're actually pretty comparable. The Speed 2 has a decent amount of forefoot rubber. We saw them taking a step back in the Speed 3 because they did add that bulk on the foam. They shaved down the outsole a little bit on the 3 to save weight, but they've gone back to a more robust lattice work style outsole here on the Speed 4, and it's actually performed decently for me so far out there on the run. Their grip hasn't been amazing like a Adidas Continental or a Puma grip, but it's been solid. So Speed 2 is pretty similar. It might even be a little bit thicker. So it'll be really interesting to see how the durability holds up with the Speed 2. Yeah, around here you can see we do have a really nice thick layer of this lateral outside heel area rubber in the Speed 2. And in the Speed 4 in that same area, it is much thinner. Now in terms of the durability of the Power Run PB, I'll get into this more in my full review of the Speed 4, but a little sneak peek here. You can see the foam is starting to degrade in the exposed areas and the outsole is wearing flat. This is not a durable foam. In my Speed 3, I had some of these areas back here completely start chunking out, which we're also getting in the Speed 4. All right guys, so that's enough yapping, and we can lace these up, do a little bit of a fit comparison, and then get out there on the run and see how the Speed 2 performs after 90 miles in only the Speed 4. This is going to be a really interesting comparison to see what we're going to get out of the Speed 2.
Alright guys, enough of these glamour shots. It's time to go put some miles in the Speed 2, baby. Wow, the fit on these is
super nice. I actually really like how they feel. Yeah, step and feel on these is much firmer than both the 4 and the 2. And oh yeah, immediately I can see the heel instability issue. That is wild. It feels like there's nothing on this lateral rear area. And I could see why people get the ankle rolly thing. Oof, that is a narrow heel. Yeah, general fit though feels pretty similar to the Speed 4. Let me go get the other Speed 4 actually. We'll do it side by side. Yeah, and the reason this is blinking because I'm going full reflective vest and everything tonight to stay safe. Charlie's making me. Yeah, so as I mentioned, the Speed 2 is a half a size bigger. But it's not really that noticeable on the foot. The upper of the Speed 4 just feels a little bit more comfortable. It feels a little bit stretchier. I think they've just updated the materials a little bit more. Now, interestingly, the padding on the tongue is actually really similar. Speed 3 did not have a padded tongue. Now, I'm not going to run in both of these today like this. Well, I'm going to run in both. I've run in both of these separately, but I'm not going to run with both of these on my feet. But yeah, you should be able to see here, Speed 4 has a much wider and more stable base. Yeah, look at, so in the Speed 4 here, you can see the foam goes out on these edges around the foot. Speed 2, not at all. We also get a little bit of foam wrapping up around the edge in the Speed 4 here, which you can see on the back. Speed 2, again, not at all. It's more of that Takumi Sun-like character where it's just a thin strip of fast foam glued to the bottom of the shoe. Yeah, Speed 4 feels much more like one unit, right? Where the midsole is part of the upper and it's all attached and working together. Speed 2 feels much more like they glued the upper onto this super fast foam on the bottom. Alright, I know I said I wasn't going to run in both of these, but I need to do a little jog just before I go outside with the Speed 2. Alright, the kids are sleeping, so I don't want to do too much more of that in the house here. But yeah, Speed 4 feels a little bit more planted, just walking around and on that little jog. I mean, you can even see as I'm walking in the Speed 2 here, you can kind of see it wobbling a little bit on the left side versus the Speed 4 because of that heel flare that we're getting with the foam. It just feels much more natural. Now I got up to some activities in the Speed 4 earlier, non-running activities, which you will see in my 100-mile week video, and they felt great for doing that. Speed 2, I would not use this for anything other than running. Yeah, walking in this feels super weird. Alright guys, I think it's time to run. Man, I always feel like such a dork when I wear this stuff, but I'm about to be a dad of 3, so I'd rather be a safe dork than opposite of safe and cool. Hey, on my way to Spelunk. On my way to go spelunk a cave, dog. Now this is the real nerdy thing. By the way, Amphipod, I cannot endorse this product because half of it just went out. So if you guys have any better safety vest recommendations, please let me know and I'll try to see if we can get one in the office for testing. Also, I forgot to mention, I did say I already ran 20 miles today, so this is just going to be a shorter run. 4 miles, try to do a little bit of pace pickups here and there, maybe some strides, take these through marathon pace, half marathon pace, see how they do at that faster zone, that the Speed 4 and Speed 3 felt a little bit mushy and not as fast for me in. So let's get it. Uh-oh. Somebody didn't clean up after themselves today. Alright guys, nice little 30-minute jaunt there. Got 4 miles and average 7:17 pace. That's not the important thing though. We'll break open the splits in a sec.
but we did some half marathon pace pickup at the end, and we also did some marathon pace there. So a little short test, but enough to get a really good read in the shoe. I'm gonna get some recovery in, and then we will get to the analysis.
All right, guys, just got done with the 4 miles, got my tailwind recovery in. We're not even gonna shower. We're just gonna stay in the Tracksmith quarter zip and give you the straight analysis of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 ride versus the Speed 2. So first, similarities between these two. The Speed 2 is a super dialed in fit. Same thing as the Speed 3 and the Speed 4. The uppers across the entire Endorphin series of shoes, the Pro 3, the Ship 3, and these two guys right here is absolutely perfect. I love how this felt immediately lacing it up. And it gave me that same exact sensation that I got when I laced up the Speed 3 for the first time, which is just a really nice, well-fitting upper that makes you feel like you want to run fast. However, the ride of these two was very different. You guys weren't just hyping it up. These are two completely different shoes. And I'd say if I had to put a number on it, probably 30% different. If the Speed 3 was a huge departure from the Speed 2, I would say the 4 is probably in between the two. Now, the 4 does feel a lot heavier on foot. It doesn't feel as immediately alive when you're running, and that's what I loved about the Speed 2. As soon as I put it on and started jogging around, it gives that nice bounce. The Speed 4 has that to some degree, but it feels a little bit more controlled, and that's gonna come from the additional weight and the fact that it has this wider heel. So that's gonna be one of the key differences out there on the run. This narrower platform feels a lot faster, and because they've widened the base so much on the 3 and the 4, it doesn't have as much natural speed as the 2 does here. Now, as for my run in the Speed 2, I'll throw up the stats here on the screen. So I did 1 mile warm up. I did 2 rounds of, half a mile, 0.3 of a mile at marathon pace, did another mile in a nice steady zone. And I finished it out with 3 good surges at half marathon pace. So I averaged about a 7:15 minute pace across that run. And I was able to take it through all of the endurance race pace ranges. Now, with the 90 miles that I have on the Speed 4, I've also taken it through those pace ranges, and I've got to say the Speed 2 did a little bit of a better job of handling those pace pickups, and felt for me, because the shoe is a little bit firmer, like a more natural shoe to run those half marathon and marathon paces. And specifically, if we're talking about half marathon pace, the Speed 2 is a much better shoe. Now, where the Speed 4 is going to take it for the ride is overall comfort. Now, because of the wider base of the Speed 4 here, it just has a little bit more comfort for those everyday mile pace ranges. Now, if you are running your workouts at an 8-minute or 9-minute pace, maybe even a 7:30 pace, the Speed 4 is still a really good option for that. But if you're pushing sub 7-minute pace or sub 6-minute pace, the Speed 2 is that GOAT, and I can see why you guys love this shoe so much. So Speed 4 definitely is not a return to form. Unfortunately for you 2 lovers out there, the 2 is in a category of its own. Now, one shoe that I recommend that's more similar to the feel of the Speed 2 here is the Adidas Takumi Sen. Now, that one is probably the fastest shoe I've ever run in and is a little bit firmer than the Speed 2 here, but it has that same super bouncy, unbridled joy feeling that it's just unrestrained speed that kind of got watered down a little bit in the 3 and the 4. Another good option that I'm hoping to put some more miles in that I think you Speed 2 lovers will like is the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Flash 2. Now, I have one really solid workout in on that shoe, and it was amazing at running faster speeds. However, it's not the most stable out there because unlike the Speed 2, it doesn't even have heel foam to land. Actually, let me go grab it. You can see that this guy doesn't even have a heel foam to land on back here. It's just a complete cutout. So when you're running on this, you have to get up on your toes. And Speed 2 to some degree has a little bit of that because of how narrow the base is, but it is a little bit friendlier for heel strikers and has just a little bit more natural stability in the heel. However, neither of these are stable shoes. And honestly, sometimes that's a good thing to have a little bit of instability in the heel of the shoe because it forces you to run up more on your forefoot and run with a little bit more strength and speed. And that's what both of these things accomplish. So if you are looking for the ultimate in marathon training speed, unfortunately, I can tell you it is not going to be the Speed 4 today. Speed 2 still does a much better job at executing those top end speeds. Speed 4 is going to be a great daily trainer for anybody who wants a do-it-all type of shoe. I did some walking in this and just errands around the house, and it's a viable shoe for that type of thing. I also took it up to 22 miles and it handled it fairly well. Got a little bit soft at the end and not as aggressive as I'd like, but if you guys aren't running 90 minutes, 2 hours every week, Speed 4 still is a great choice. Speed 2 is just in a category of its own as the ultimate fast but still friendly and soft training shoe. So I still need to take these out for a proper workout comparison. So if you've watched this point, let me know what workout should I do comparing these, and whoever gives me the best workout comparing these, I will do that within the next month and post that video for you all. Okay, so let me know any other questions you have about these two below, and of course, I will be back tomorrow with the full 100-mile review of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. Alright guys, see you guys. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.